Can crowdsourcing be leveraged to help identify misinformation on social media? And if so, how can we predict which crowd workers will be the most accurate? My name is Robert Kaufman, and I'm joined by my co author, Michael Haupt, and the two of us will be discussing our research paper, Who's in the Crowd Matters. As we all know, online misinformation, particularly on social media platforms like Twitter, is rampant. So much so that the World Health Organization declared an infodemic, which is characterized by deliberate attempts to disseminate incorrect information to undermine public health responses. COVID-19 is possibly the most salient example as of 2022, but other examples are all around us. Some key distinguishing factors of recent misinformation spread is that they're at unprecedented levels, it's rapidly changing, rapidly spreading, and heavily politically charged. This begs the question, how do we combat misinformation at scale? Focusing on the case of misinformation spread on social media platforms like Twitter, there have been two major approaches to this massive detection problem. The first is the usage of machine learning algorithms to detect misinformation. These approaches are limited by the nuanced and rapidly changing nature of misinformation on social media. As a result, we focus our research on the power that crowds and crowdsourcing can have for human intelligence tasks like information assessment and truthfulness evaluation. Our goal for this research is to understand if crowds could be leveraged for misinformation detection tasks and what considerations need to be made on the selection of crowd workers or platforms in order to maximize the accuracy of aggregate results. Specifically, our first research question asks, can crowdsourcing be used to detect recent and politically charged misinformation? For this, we had participants perform a tweet assessment task where they coded tweets on their accuracy and stance or sentiment towards a topic. These were compared against expert judgments. Our second research question asks, what cognitive factors predict crowd worker accuracy? For this, we measured information assessment traits, attitudes, and beliefs of our participants. Lastly, we're interested in understanding the differences in results between crowdsourcing platforms. Specifically, we looked at differences between MTurk workers and university students on a platform called Sona. Our major outcome came from a tweet assessment task where participants evaluated a total of 36 tweets across three major COVID-19 related topics, each of which was divided so that half of the tweets were true and half contained misinformation. And each of these segments was further divided to contain tweets that expressed positive sentiment, negative sentiment, or neutral sentiment. An example of a negative sentiment contains misinformation tweet would say something like, you shouldn't get your COVID vaccine. Negative sentiment. It has microchips and will track you. That is, contains misinformation. For each tweet, participants gave an assessment of whether it contains misinformation and what its sentiment is towards the topic, such as pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, or neutral. To test differences between recruitment platforms, we recruited half of our participants from MTurk and half from Sona. Here's an example of the task. We paired the tweet coding data with cognitive information assessment and bias measures of our participants. Our first measure was the cognitive reflective thinking test, which is a short test which measures a person's ability to override intuitive responses to come to a correct result. For example, one question on the cognitive reflective thinking test asks, a bat and a ball cost $1.10 in total. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? The intuitive response would say that the ball costs 10 cents. However, the correct response is that the ball costs 5 cents. Our second measure is BFI conscientiousness, which measures a person's proclivity to be orderly, cautious, and thorough. Third, we measured our participants' need for cognitive closure, which measures comfort with conceptual ambiguity and need for order, predictability, and certainty of information. Next, we measured our participants' political orientation on a scale in the United States, as all of our participants were from the United States. And this scale goes from politically conservative to politically liberal. Lastly, we measured our participants' trust in institutions. This includes trust in elected officials, news, medical scientists, and religious leaders. As a whole, we predict that participants who are able to override intuitive responses, who are orderly, cautious, and thorough when assessing information, and who are okay with conceptual ambiguity and do not have high needs of certainty, will be better at assessing misinformation, as misinformation often requires a person to override intuitive responses to see through that misinformation. It requires a cautious and thorough eye to critique that misinformation and find its flaws. And as information is rapidly changing, as science learns more about the order of the world, having a low need for certainty may keep a person open to the rapidly changing nature of science and information. We also predict that participants who lean politically conservative will be less accurate at identifying misinformation. This is because of the higher reported proportion of misinformation on traditionally conservative media outlets as compared to neutral or liberal leaning media outlets. This is a result from past research. Finally, we predict that participants who have high trust in medical scientists will be more accurate at identifying misinformation than those with low trust in medical scientists.
So our first research question was, can crowdsourcing be used to detect recent and politically charged misinformation? So our study has shown that crowdsourcing can be an effective way for detecting misinformation. So on average, over 70% of misinformation tweets were correctly identified. And then there were also moderate rates of false positives, in other words, overtagging misinformation. So our second research question was, what cognitive factors predict crowd worker accuracy? So our study found that conscientiousness, CRT score, and trust in medical scientists were positively associated with accuracy, while NFCC and political conservatism were negatively associated. We also ran a Shapley value regression, which is a computational approach that looks at the amount of variance that's explained by each independent variable when controlled for potential multicollinearity between the variables. And we found that trust in medical scientists were the best predictor of accuracy, explained 22.6% of the variance. And then we also found that political conservativeness, 22.5% of variance, and then CRT, which had 22.1% of the variance, were also highly influential. Our third research question is, are there differences between crowdsourcing platforms? We found that SONA undergraduates were significantly more accurate than MTurk workers for all topic instances, and this was highly significant. SONA participants were also higher in conscientiousness, trust in medical scientists, and for this sample, conscientiousness was the best predictor of accuracy, explaining up to 43.2% of the variance from the Shapley regression model. MTurk workers were higher in NFCC, were more likely to be conservative, and had higher trust in elected officials, news organizations, and religious leaders. For this sample, CRT and trust in medical scientists were the best predictors of accuracy. These results indicate that different platforms attract different users, and also differences in the compensation and incentive mechanisms associated with those platforms also can influence which traits are most influential for how they perform on the task. So our conclusions are that crowdsourcing can be a powerful way to detect recent politically charged misinformation online. So overall, who is in the crowd does matter. Personal biases, cognitive factors, and crowd recruitment platforms should be taken into account when leveraging crowds for assessment tasks. And other factors besides political orientation, such as who a person trusts or how they process information, may be better predictors for information performance, or at least as predictive. Thank you for listening to our results, and thank you for the National Science Foundation for funding our research.